Hey
Hi,
Ashley, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How was your day?
Busy. Busy, but good. We're almost to winter break.
Yes, a lot of people are waiting for that. Well, I don't know about parents. Parents are like, oh, winter break.
Yes.
It's the opposite for you because you're an educator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What about cold? Is it cold where you are?
It has been really cold, but today I didn't even wear my jacket. So it was pretty nice today, but I'm expecting to get pretty cold soon because in Ohio we're cold, but you never know what day it's going to be in Ohio. It could be warm, it could be rainy, it could be sunny, it could be freezing. You just don't know.
Yeah, in Maryland, it's chilly. Well, it's more than chilly. It's cold. Sweater weather, heavy coat weather. I know it's going to get worse, so I'm not excited about that, but I know that the cold weather is a necessary thing. So we'll get through it, right? We'll get through it. So we're gonna kick this off. Let's talk about. I asked you, the guest, to first introduce yourself. I know you just mentioned that you're in Ohio, but tell
Yes.
everyone a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do, and how you ended up here. And let's talk about.
Yeah, so I'm Ashley Rachelle Gray. I am a high school English teacher. I also write children books, and I'm hoping to expand that into my other forms of writing soon as well. And I found Let's Talk About, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. So Cincinnati is where I'm at, Bengals, if you're a Bengals fan. And I found Let's Talk About on Instagram when I was just browsing, and I happened to come across one of your videos, went to your Instagram page, and I saw that you could request to be on here, and that's how I found you.
Yes, great. So recommend to other people. We want to hear and meet a lot. Well, it's just me, but I'm
Yeah.
very interested in meeting a lot of other people. So welcome. We do have some other educators here. So in the event that we're talking, just know that you have some others that are in your profession that are here listening in case you want to give them a shout out or anything. So you want to tell us about your book series. Why don't we just go ahead and get into that? Go ahead
Yeah,
and let
so
us know what about it.
yeah, so I have my children book series, People Like Me. Right now I have three books in it. The first one was The Dimming Light, and this is a story that addresses depression because all of my children book series addresses some type of form of mental health. And so right now we have three. We have The Dimming Light that addresses depression, and then I have two books that address anxiety, which is The Melting Snowman and The Touchdown Tiger. And so that is the series, People Like Me, Mental Health for Children.
So what inspired you to write these books?
Yeah, so I think one of my biggest inspirations was being a teacher, seeing, even teaching high school. I know I'm writing these children books, but even teaching high school, seeing how much their mental health is affected. Along with me personally, I have, pretty bad anxiety. I don't have social anxiety. So when you meet me, people don't think I'm an anxious person, but I have bad general anxiety and I have depression. And so for me, I wasn't diagnosed until I was a sophomore in college, and it was due to some physical symptoms. If I had something like this growing up where I saw these symptoms, I might have been able to help myself earlier.
Yeah, I think that that's so interesting because when we talk a lot about diversity in books, and a lot of the time the focus is on what you can see, what you can touch, what you can hear, or whatever else. But I know, and I don't want to discount anyone who does focus on those other things. I mean, beyond that, but automatically we as people tend to just focus on what we can see and so forth, what's visible, tangible. So for you to write a book that's focused on mental health awareness for children, I think it's a really good idea. Even for you to, like, you're here and you're telling us that you have mental health I guess issues. I don't, and let
Mhm.
me know. I want to make sure. I know when we were talking before in preparation for this, I wanted to be very sure that I did not offend anyone with the language that I'm using. But for you to even come forward and let us know as part of this discussion that it's something that you struggle with, I think is like phenomenal because a lot of people don't do that. There's like a shame or a stigmatism associated with that. You mentioned that you see students that you work with that are suffering. So what do you think, like if they were younger and they were able to read your book, what do you think the impact may have been?
I think that, maybe, because you're thinking about children's books, you're not thinking of a kid just picking up the book. not for me anyway, I'm thinking of a parent or a teacher, somebody reading the book to the child or with the child. And so in the back of my books, I have care pages. So I have local Cincinnati, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana resources, hotlines, but I also have a national hotline. And then I have care pages where it's talking about different types of treatments you can do or just different tools to use. I also have an activity page. So for the dimming light, talking about depression, I have a page in the back where there's an activity they can get Play-Doh and they can, form Jack's emotions, who is the main character of my story, as they go through the book, and then kind of form their own emotion at the end on how they're feeling, just to start identifying those. In the Melting Snowman, I have them have an activity where they can make a stress ball and it looks like Mr. Snow out of a white balloon. And that way they can use that when they feel like they're having a hard time. So I try to add more resources in there along with questions at the end that parents and teachers can ask.
So it's an age appropriate verbiage and activities to open up a space for a conversation around these topics. How did you decide on the different mental health issues that you selected? So you said anxiety, depression. Was there another one, or just anxiety and depression?
It's really just anxiety and depression right now. The third book I did that addresses anxiety, The Touchdown Tiger, it hits a little bit of confidence and self-esteem, but I do want to expand on that. The reason I chose those was because I did this for my capstone class and I had a deadline, and I wanted to do ones that I knew about well. So I chose the ones that I currently and actively have had. That way I could go off of my experience. In order to do some other mental health disorders, I'm going to need to get sensitivity readers and really do more research. So I just wanted to make sure that I was doing what I know first. And then as I expand, I can get more resources and get, maybe involved with doctors or the mental health organizations and things like that.
Yeah. And I think for those who are not aware, the Capstone Project was part of her graduate program. So there was some research involved and she worked with them. And then, as you mentioned, working with doctors. What would you say to, I guess you mentioned the research, but is there any additional information that people who are questioning whether or not like doctors may validate what you've written? Is there any kind of messaging around that that you would like to share with anyone?
I mean, I would just say that, again, I'm using my experience as someone who has this disorder. I'm using my experience as a teacher who works with students daily who have these disorders and people who have access to school counselors, I should say. I've been in therapy before. I'm not a doctor, but I've definitely had, people in my corner to help me out to review my information. So even, for example, mental health has been something I've been a big advocate for, not just my children book series. I actually had a watch party for the controversial show 13 Reasons Why in college. And that was something I had to fight for, but I did have counselors and therapists come, and they were able to be there as a support, as a resource, talk about signs and symptoms of, self-harm or suicide. And it ended up saving multiple residents, at least their friends' life, I should say. It helped them see symptoms. So this isn't the first time I've done something with mental health. It's just the first form in a children's series.
Yeah, I know when we first talked about the books that you create, as I was listening to you, I was like, oh yeah, I think this the emotional intelligent aspect of this, like being able to have these conversations and understand where you are emotionally and how to interact with someone and have them receive you or explain to them, how you're feeling. Like as a child, I know I had low emotional intelligence as a child. I was very timid, and I would cry if something went wrong. Not saying that, children don't cry, but I overly cried. I was very sensitive. I think that things like this help children better develop their emotional intelligence. Give them a space to say, it's okay to express the way you feel. It's okay that something's wrong. It's okay to feel that. Do you think that you will in the future create a book that specifically centers on emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I think that anything's possible. I have a few ideas coming up that I don't want to spoil yet because I don't know for sure, how I'm doing it. But I think that that's something that I could easily address in almost any context, like in any type of storyline. So
Mhm.
that's definitely on the books. And, talking about that and talking about how people perceive things and how, trying to understand your own emotions, part of the reason I came up with this book series wasn't just for people who have anxiety or depression or mental health, but it was for awareness. So even kids who don't experience these issues or problems, when they read them, my hopes is that they're going to have empathy for people that are different from them. So if you read this, instead of, ostracizing someone because they're acting differently than you already have some familiarity with it when you read this in the book. So having that representation is really important so kids don't, treat people differently when they have no interaction with them.
Yeah. And kids can be so cruel, right?
And
Just
very
because
bold.
they're
And
different.
if it's ignorance, they just don't know. So I
Mhm.
think anything getting them familiar with other types of people is great.
So we have a question. Have you noticed an increase in diagnosis in students post-pandemic? I guess with mental health
Yeah.
illness.
Yeah, so I only worked for about a year or so before the pandemic. So I've kind of worked evenly on both sides. And I would say there was an extreme increase
Mm.
from my experience. Now that doesn't mean that's everywhere. It could have just been the school I was at or, the kids I had, but definitely seemed to affect them. And now, I have seniors right now and I was like shocked when they told me that they were in 8th grade when the pandemic hit. Like I had forgotten it was that long ago. Like it doesn't feel
Yeah.
that long ago. So now we're seeing the generation of the kids who entered high school when the pandemic hit, which is I think causing a lot of that issue with social media and
Mhm.
things like that with their mental health. But yeah, I feel like, having that online only interaction for a year or whatever it was really caused an issue with their mental health or maybe made
Yeah,
it worse.
so my son did online learning, and when it came time for him to go back to school, um one of the concerns that I had at the front of things was social interaction and how he re-enters, the
Mhm.
classroom, how he
Yes.
could adjust with that. I do think that he was fine. So he was fine, but I had touch points with the teachers to make sure that he was progressing. If anything was happening, I wanted to get ahead of it. But I do remember also along the way that even though there were periods of time where we didn't see anyone, I work. I don't write full time, but I work. So there was this other audience that he was exposed to. So
Mhm.
besides just me and him, a lot of Zooms, and we had a tutor that would come towards when they started opening things up. There was a tutor that would come, and then finally we got to see family and stuff. But that's something I was very, very concerned about. And I do believe that socially, some kids did suffer significantly,
Mhm.
especially if you entered the pandemic and you were already having social challenges. The pandemic probably made it worse, right?
Well, and what was really interesting to me, and this was not just one person, I had multiple students who, when the mask mandate was over, refused to take off their mask. And not due to health, it was they didn't want to show their face.
Mm.
So they became extremely self-conscious of their face. Like they would wear it at home. They
Mm.
wouldn't even just wear it at school. Like they were only wearing the mask because they didn't like what they looked like underneath after wearing it for a year. And so that was shocking to me. And even my dog was a pup, like a year old, and I had tried so hard to get her socialized. And then when the pandemic hit, we didn't go to dog parks anymore. I didn't take her to Dogtown, didn't take her anywhere. And she's still friendly, but now when she goes up to other dogs, she's very submissive and not as interested. So even animals, like I feel like everybody's affected when it
Yeah.
comes to the lack of social, ability, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So, and you mentioned that you teach high school, but the book is it's a children's book. It's like a
Yeah.
picture book. What age groups would you say it's more geared towards?
Yeah, so I was really gearing it toward kindergarten through second or third, so probably around like 5 years old to about 8 years old is the most
Hmm.
appropriate. I mean, you can obviously look at it when they're older than that, but that's kind of the age range it's for.
Okay. And where can people find your books if they would like to go grab a copy, or even
Yeah.
if they want to like see you at an event that you may be appearing at, book signing, where can they find your books and you?
Yeah, so the main place to find my books is Amazon. That's where, for anybody, all over, they can find on Amazon. If you are from around the Cincinnati area, you can find them at Household Books, that's in Cincinnati. Scarlet Rose Books is in Ludlow, Kentucky, because I'm right on the border.
Mhm.
And then Bike Trail Books, they have them as well, and that's in Loveland, Ohio. And then for me, the easiest way is my Instagram, and it's just my full name, Ashley Rachelle Gray. And then in my bio, I have the link to Amazon. I have the link to my Facebook authored page. I have a link to everything, and that's where I'll put my book signings and, events that I'll be at.
And I typically post, let me see if I'm going to write out your Instagram account, because I typically do that, but I'm operating somewhat with a challenge this evening because I'm moving between devices. So
Yeah.
I'm going to post your IG, and then I'm going to pin it. Okay, let me pin it. Pin it there. So if you would like to follow Ashley, get some more information about her books, see where she may be popping up. You've had some interviews on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell anyone about your appearances? Because you've done quite well
Yeah.
with your
Yeah.
yes.
So last December, I was on Kiss 107, which is a radio station. And I was on there, and that was my first like big event. So I was really excited about that because we came on about the dimming lights.
Mhm.
I actually had a student illustrate this for
Oh,
me
hold it
last
up a
year.
little bit more so that they can see it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a student illustrated this for me. So I took her with me, and we went on to, Kiss 107, and they just did a little interviews, and we just had it play for like 5 hours or something in between the songs. So that was really cool. Got to get some really neat, I don't know, like experiences with that co-host. They kind of become
Mhm.
someone that I can reach out to now. And then I went on the news about a month ago on Channel 9, and I just talked about my book, just kind of like this. And that was really cool. I've never been on TV. It was only a few minutes, but it was so cool being behind everything and seeing everything. And it was just great to feel like I was actually getting an audience where people could see how important it is for mental health. Because the books, even if I sell these books, I'm not going to make a whole bunch of money on these books, right? It's more for the message, like stopping the stigma. Let's be able to talk about this. That way people feel like they have a safe space, and maybe that will
Mhm.
stop the self-harm and the suicide and, the things that we're scared to talk about.
Yeah, I think that this is, I just think that this is so good. And I'm hoping that you can connect with some doctors' offices or mental health experts where you guys can just collaborate to push your book
Mhm.
forward. Anything that advocates for children just having a space where they can express themselves, I think is a great thing. You started to mention, I think, your process. So tell us a little bit about your process to be published. People always want to know about what other authors have went through to get published. So give us a little bit of insight into your journey to actually publishing.
Yeah, so I mean, when I first came up with the story idea, it took me a while to perfect it. It didn't take me too long because I was on a time crunch for graduation. But once I had the story finalized, I actually found my illustrator on TikTok,
Mhm.
and she goes on Fiverr. So if you ever need an illustrator, you can go onto Fiverr. It's an independent like resource, I guess people can
Yes.
sell their
Yeah,
services.
I think this
Yeah,
audience is very familiar with
so everyone
TikTok.
with that.
TikTok and
So
Fiverr, yes.
yeah, so I had my illustrator from there. That's Jennifer Singer, and she does a great job. And then she formatted that for me. I got that started on Amazon. And then when it comes to getting my books in like bookstore and appearances, it's just asking. Like I had this advice from someone that's also a local author, and she was Miss Kentucky, and I called her up, and she said, just ask for things. So I went to a local bookstore that was doing a writer's workshop, and I said, do you think I could do a book signing when I publish this? And he said, yes. And from there, I asked to be on the radio. They say that, yes. And it just kind of, just ask. And that's like the biggest thing I have. That's been my success, is just asking people, if
Mhm.
I could do these things or come on here or, have my book in their store. And usually they've said yes to me. So
Yeah, so you're lucky because sometimes there are a lot of authors who they ask for those things, but something that comes up often when I'm talking to authors is this idea of gatekeeping or comparison of independent authors versus traditional authors, and it's kind of harder. Not kind of, it is harder to get your foot in the door because you may be seen as less than because you are independent. It
Yeah.
doesn't sound like you've encountered that, but well, let me ask you: have you encountered any situations where whoever you may have asked or you may have tried to work with, either you didn't get responses or they said no or something like that? And do you think it was attributed to you being independent?
Oh yeah. I was trying to get into Joseph Beth's bookstores and they said no. I was trying to do a signing there. They had said no. I have tried to get my Touchdown Tiger book, try to get this in the hands of the Bengals and Joe Burrow because he has a mental health foundation. And I have contacted the foundation. They were like kind of interested and then fell off. I've talked to mental health organizations, kind of interested and fell off. And I do think it's because I'm independent, because I don't have a name for myself. I mean, I do, but not big enough yet.
Like
And
celebrity.
so,
Yeah.
not celebrity, for sure not celebrity. So I think that really does hinder me. I did get my book in the hands of some Bengal cheerleaders, but they never did anything with it either. So it's like it's almost there, but it just, I have had little things, but I haven't had my big break kind of thing or like someone who really was vouching for me.
Yeah.
But, again, I was taught when I was going to school for English and writing that you're always going to get the no's. So celebrate the yeses.
Yes. And then Dedrick, who popped on, who helps people get yeses, I will say, he said sometimes it takes 99 no's to get that one yes. Mm-hmm. Which is so true, right? And then asking you shall receive, all of those little things tend to be true. It just takes a while to get there. And I think we've all experienced that. I think the important thing is that you keep pushing forward. So you're going to continue writing this series and you're going to add additional books. I know you don't want to tell us everything, but are there certain other mental health illnesses that you may target and for specific reasons?
I want to do some that are like ones that I feel like are really common and ones that maybe aren't represented very often. So, one I want to talk about is, and this isn't necessarily mental health. I should clarify that it's not just mental health, but that's really what I'm targeting. So like, even just like ADHD is one that I really want to address in the future. And, when I was doing my research for my capstone, I was doing a lot of interviews with people and parents, and I had a parent who has a personality disorder, and they were trying to get a book to kind of explain what was happening to their child. And they had to use a postpartum depression children's book to explain. So I feel like, personality disorders, that one might be a little bit more challenging, but that's something I want to look into as well, because I think people are too scared to address that one. It's a little bit rare to find books that address that for a young audience. So I feel like that's one that's needed if she couldn't even find one, online to kind of help her child through those symptoms she was experiencing. So I have a whole bunch. I really want to do body dysmorphia as well. That's probably in my next few books. I'm going to do one of those too.
So if you choose to do ADHD, it'd be interesting because, sometimes in the news I see that children are often misdiagnosed. Like there's something else going on. So if you do that, it'll be interesting to see how you approach it. And if there is, I don't know, for children, if you say, oh, it may be this, or you maybe that, but it'll be interesting to see how you put forward that storyline.
And it may not say like, so my books will say like a children's story about anxiety, a children's story about depression. That book may not say a children's story about ADHD. It might just be the inspiration for that, because again, this is people like me, right? So it's different types of people, and that can include personalities. I really want to focus on mental health to help people, but that one may not be considered mental health, but it could be something that that could still help a child. So people like me, different representations, and especially when it comes to personality, mental health, your mind. And so that one may not say, you know, a children's story about ADHD because it is so hard to nail down.
Yeah.
But it might be something that was inspired by it.
Yeah. And as long as someone can identify with it, I do think that you're filling a gap. Again, because we're tend to be visual. Something else that I would recommend to you is that, because I think there is a mental health awareness month, right? Or all those things that you mentioned, I think they align with like certain days and so forth. So around those times is probably when you can really push your book and get more visibility for it, or your books and get more visibility for it. So there's a site called National Today, and you can look on there and see all the different days that pop up. There's practically something every day. Yeah. So you can check there and see what may come up. Someone, Dedrick said he's going to follow you. And then we have a few.
I
so
love
if anyone,
that.
What'd you say?
I said, I love that.
Yes. And he just told us that Mental Health Awareness Month is in March. So now you have that date. We are winding down. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I mean, the only thing I'll really say, because I don't have anything coming out right now, I don't have an event set up, but the only thing I'll really say is that if you are a parent or if you're interested in hearing, I am doing a 31-day holiday story time on Instagram and YouTube. So every day I post a video of me reading, and it's not my books. It's just any holiday book. It can be Christmas, Kwanzaa, just winter time. And I am on day 14 right now. So they're all posted on my YouTube channel. But I'll be doing that for the rest of the month just to, you know, I saw this principal on the news one day. She did a story time every night because not all of the kids had someone to read to them. Yeah. And I can't commit to every night, but I figured I'll commit to the month of December and doing holiday stories. So yeah, so you're reading them live. I'm not reading them live. I'm videotaping them and then I'm posting them on my YouTube, but it's linked in my Instagram on my bio. And I put up a little picture of the book I read so you can see which one it is for that day. Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I know that has to be exhausting. I mean, yeah, I was going to do live originally and I was like, well, what if I'm busy? Like today, I did at 7. So I'm like, what if I'm busy at 7 that day? If I can record them prior, then it might be easier to get them on time. Yeah, but it's not only the reading, it's the editing that comes with the videos, right? So you read and then you have to format the video to get it up there and all that other stuff. I think some people don't realize that aspect of it. There's a lot more that goes into it than just reading it and putting the video up there. So I commend you for doing that. I hope you continue. I think I'm following you now, so we'll be watching you. And then I'm going to also add you to the group with all the other authors. I think it's authors, illustrators. We have some bookstore owners and podcasters in our group. So we'll connect you with everyone in the back end and you can socialize and network and I guess join the tribe. So thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I am looking forward to seeing your new book when you get ready to release it. And I also want to thank everyone else who is here for joining us this evening. And I hope you all have a great Thursday evening. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye. Bye.